The following program is available in high definition on Channel 700. This program is designed and produced by the community with the support of TV Cogeco.
Welcome to this episode of Council Matters. This is a program where I'm joined by three members of our local Oakville community to discuss an issue. Today we're going to talk about whether our tax path is correct. And in the second half of the show, we'll be joined by three members of council who will react to what the members of the community and I discuss in this section. The reason I call it Council Matters is the Municipal Act says that all municipal power is exercised only by council, and I think it's pretty clear from that who's the boss. Ultimately, though, the council answers to the public, and that's why we start with the public. With me today are Pierre Girouard, who is the president of the River Oaks Association of Residents, ROAR for short, Marc Danko, who's the vice president of Cushman Wakefield, and Craig Schiller, who's the vice president of the West River Residents Association. Thank you very much for joining me today. Council and I have been on an 8-year path to drive down the average rate of increase of our taxes. And we are aware of people who would like us to cut taxes, but in the main, most of the feedback we get is that we're on the right path in terms of just steadily diminishing how much taxes increase. Now, one of the things that I think is worth checking every now and then is that the right path? Are there things in the community going without being done because of the path we're on? And as we get our finances under such control as we have, we do have the ability to look at doing new things. And so one of the things that I think it's important to talk about is, what are we missing? What should we be doing? Why don't I start off with you, Craig?
Well, as you know, in our area we have the refurbishment of the Oakville Arena coming up. And in an adjacent neighborhood we have the hospital lands that are going to be converted to a community center. So that's a bunch of bucks right there. And I'm hoping we've got them.
Well, we do.
Well, good.
And but are there any other area concerns in your neighborhood, or for that matter, anywhere in town that you know about? I mean, all of us in Oakville, we live throughout the town, and we shop and travel throughout the town.
We have a big project coming up downtown where we're going to be redoing Lakeshore Road and redoing basically the whole downtown. So there's a whole lot of capital money that's going to be going into the town, which is great, assuming that we find a way to pay for everything.
Yeah, okay. I'll explain how that works in just a second. Marc, what about you? What's your sense of needs that are unmet?
Well, personally, again, I'm a resident of Bronte, as you know, and we've talked about what Bronte needs in other situations. Certainly, road infrastructure is important. Some of the public areas in Bronte certainly need a lot of attention. Again, money's got to come from somewhere. I, as a taxpayer, like everybody else, love to see taxes down, but realize that obviously the money has to come from somewhere. Want to make sure, though, it goes towards the right things. And certainly in crumbling infrastructure, like in any city, is important. All well and good to revitalize or create new community centers and whatnot, but I think we need to take care of the stuff that we have first.
And Pierre, how about you?
Well, the area that we're in is relatively new, so it's there's going to be a few more parks, which we appreciate. The general worry, though, if you want to keep taxes down, and I think every resident wants to, is to make sure that large infrastructure like the cultural hub is going to be well thought through. The other thing is right north of us, north of Dundas, is all this new development, and we want to make sure that this is mostly paid by the new people coming in rather than from general taxes.
So let me set your minds at ease about infrastructure. Uniquely in the province, Oakville has provided for not only the upkeep and repair of infrastructure within the tax framework that we have, but also the renewal of our capital infrastructure, looking out. So in our long-range capital budgeting, all of this is looked after. We boast that we're the only municipality that does not have the famous infrastructure maintenance and renewal gap. To give you an example, I recently told the Chamber that I had a speech, I called it A Tale of Two Cities and the Little Town That Could. And we're the little town that could. We have cities on either side of us who have deficits in infrastructure maintenance and renewal. And in the case of one of those cities, it reduces to an $80 million a year deficit, and in the other one, according to their own report, it's $49 million a year. Now, let's look at that $49 million a year deficit and what they need to be spending on infrastructure. If they spent that $49 million like they should, they would be taxing and spending $19 million a year more than we do, because right now their taxing and spending is $30 million a year less than us. And so the way they achieve that is by shifting out into the future these expenses that we provide for. And I hear from a lot of our residents that they appreciate what we're doing. They can feel the differences they drive on our roads, literally. So same thing for the North Park Community Center that we need to build sometime in the next 10 years. Same thing for the Kerr Street work and the old hospital site. We're very proud of the fact that we're managing all that to fit this tax framework that we've created. And what I wanted to check was, like this year's tax increase was 0.7%. So I mean, you barely could feel that. It's like, I think on average maybe $5 or $6 per 100,000. And so when you're in that zone, I think people wouldn't kill us if it was 1% as opposed to 0.7%. I mean, 0.7, the difference to you between 0.7 and 1% is not a lot of money if there's a crying need in the community that we're missing because of this path we're on. I wanted to make sure we hear about it. So so I'm saying the worries or the items, the concerns that you mentioned, we've looked after. Is there something we haven't done that people say to you, if only we had such and so? Pierre? I mean, I know in your neighborhood there's a crossing that people would like. I mean, and that's a small expense, but it's a thing that people want.
Yes, there's. It's mostly down to very local things. Parking, safety issues, perhaps more police because of traffic issues. There's no major items that I can think of offhand. It's basically just small local items.
So, I mean, that makes sense, because Money Sense has for several years now said that we're one of the top places in the country to live, and there should be some truth to that when they say it over and over again. But I see cities as competing for residents who, I mean, I lived in Sudbury when they were losing residents when I was a young man. That's a different kind of place. It's a different kind of experience. For one thing, if you're losing residents, your homes start losing value because there's nobody to want to buy them. And most of us, our biggest investment is our home. So I'm always aware that we want a few people to want to take our place when it comes time for each of us to sell our homes, right? So we want to stay competitive in the sense of being attractive. And you don't do that by saying Money Sense says this, number one, we can relax. You stay competitive by asking, what else do we need to do? And it may be that it's on the margins, as we say in business, the small things. Craig, what's your sense of that?
I think in our particular area, we're in pretty good shape. We would like to see more revitalization on Kerr Street. We'd like to see more businesses coming in, but that's kind of outside of the town's purview. And aside from that, you know, you look in our area and the prices of houses just keep going up, so somebody wants to live there.
I think you're becoming a very hot area.
We are.
Marc?
Like Pierre said, probably a lot of small things. I mean, I can certainly take anybody around my neighborhood and point to a lot of small things, mind you. But safety, for sure, is an aspect. We've got a lot of younger families moving into the neighborhoods, and they're taking over from a lot of elderly people. So safety issues, big concern. To your point on, you know, where taxes are going and where you've been able to drive them, I guess I'm curious of, you know, where are they going to go? So can you keep them at those levels? You know, it looks great that this is where it's headed, but what happens in the next term, for example? And if I can kind of poke that one back at you, but
I welcome that.
So that's one thing, and then I would suggest. I mean, we've seen Oakville is again the tale of two cities, north of the QE and south of the QE. North of the QE, where all the development is happening. There's some big infrastructure projects going on there. And you just start to wonder, where are your taxes going? Where are your tax dollars going? Because you don't see that kind of infrastructure development in the South End, for example. So I'm sure there's a question always on everybody's mind is, you know, is it all being pushed up into the north and on these new big community projects, et cetera?
Yeah. So the biggest community, well, in the next 8 years, our biggest community projects are a new community center for the old hospital site, which is south of the QE, a new community center around refurbishing and rejuvenating the old Oakville Arena at Kerr and Rebecca, which is also below the QE. The repair and replacement of the roadbed and the pipes under Lakeshore in downtown Oakville is another major project that's ahead.
All East End.
All south, for let me call it. Yeah. We actually, over the last 8 years, one of the places that we visited biggest with infrastructure was we started in the West End with Queen Elizabeth Park Community and Cultural Center, and then that was the first rec center south of the highway. And for some reason, that awakened a desire in the center south for one, too, and in the southeast for one, too. So your brothers and sisters to the east of you, it's a little bit like the kids saying to the parents, me too.
Absolutely.
But in terms of the big infrastructure in the north, Council and I have been dedicated for 8 years to the idea that all of that infrastructure has to be paid for by growth, and that's why we have we've striven to have the highest development charges. When I became mayor 8 years ago, we had the 15th highest development charge. And what that meant was a lot of the capital infrastructure that we needed to service growth was shifted to the taxpayer. And what we've done is we've now shifted all of the costs of growth that the law permits back onto developers. Now, we try very hard to be the top in the province, but the city of Markham is a relentless competitor, and so although in 2013 our development charge per new home was $55,000, in Markham they got up to $65,000, and it's curious, but new homes, new subdivisions in both places sell out overnight, and that's because we're so attractive as places to live. People line up to give the developers their money.
To that comment, though, I mean, generally a new home is cheaper than some of the older homes in the south end of the city, simply because of the land value.
Yes.
So you get a lot more bang for your buck. So easy for a homeowner to absorb that. In my business,
and it's music to my ears to hear you say that.
Which is great. In my business, though, in commercial real estate end of things, what I see in terms of development on a daily basis, having the highest development charges is problematic, obviously, because it's definitely a detriment to growth. Right. And it's reducing land values, it's reducing the potential for growth. So it's definitely, I think it's got to come from both sides.
We have a totally different profile on the commercial real estate side. We actually have the lowest of any of the municipalities in Peel and York. So we actually keep a weather eye on what we see as having really high demand is the residential side. And so in that environment, as a business person, you don't want to leave money on the table. But for commercial and employment, we think that's really important. So we actually have a totally different policy in that direction. We work very hard to stay competitive in that area. I really thank you guys for the information that you've shared with me today, and I'm going to be talking about it with 3 other members of council in just a moment, and we will see just how much council matters. Hello, thank you for rejoining us. As we consider who pays for growth in Halton and in Oakville today, we're joined now in this session with by the chair of Halton Region, Gary Carr, and the councillor for the northeast part of Oakville, town and regional councillor Tom Adams, and the councillor for the southwest part of Oakville, town and regional councillor Alan Johnston. So you heard, I think, pretty loud and clear from the residents that we may need to do a better job, I think, in communicating the difference between how we treat residential growth and jobs growth. Did you get that sense, Alan?
Yes, I did. Mark made a very interesting point. He was, about the difference between employment and lands and residential. And just to re-emphasize, our DCs are the highest, or amongst the highest for residential, but are very competitive for employment lands. So I think we have the best of both worlds.
And Gary, what's your sense of the best way to try to address this? Is it too complicated to tell? Because I think we've certainly gotten across the message that we're proud of having the highest residential DCs. But you know what? I'm conscious of many times having just said DCs and not made a residential distinction myself.
Yeah, there is a difference, of course, between the residential, and we do have high residential. But it's important to note that we've been successful. We've had the best record in creating jobs in your community with the last little while, Siemens, Price Waterhouse, Target up in Milton, Lowe's. We have the best record of creating jobs, so our DCs have not been an impediment. And in fact, one of the reasons people come here is because we've been able to keep our taxes low. And as all of you know, since we've come in 2006, we've actually frozen our regional taxes. So it's a combination of the development charges plus your initial taxes. And as you also rightly know, if you keep it a good place to live, it's a good place to do business. And we've been the best anywhere in Canada, and therefore anywhere in the world. And that's something to be proud of.
Well, and I certainly think every member of council, regional and Oakville, is proud of that. Tom, what's your sense of how to tell this story going forward?
Well, we have, in Oakville, had a big strategic direction around controlling growth and preserving green space. we've been working very hard at building and maintaining infrastructure, and we've been working really hard at controlling debt and taxes. And the Who Pays for Growth plays to all three of those key strategic directions of our council. If we don't have the development community paying for the development and the cost of the infrastructure for the new homes, then we're unable to build and maintain our infrastructure locally. And we heard the southern community saying, what about us? And if we're not having the developers in the north paying for their infrastructure, we can't rebuild and maintain the infrastructure and community facilities in the south. So it's very important from that perspective. It's very important from the perspective of controlling growth. If we don't set the appropriate price structure for our development charges, we're not sending the right direction for the market. So it's an important element to make sure that we get it right.
So, Alan, do you agree? Tom's basically said that there's a dividend, an actual fiscal dividend to the residents who still need things from this policy.
Of course there is. Taxpayers, when they pay their property taxes, it should be spent within the community, not for expanding the community. Residential prices of new houses reflect growth costs, and the developer should pay for it, not the existing tax base.
So I guess on that entire score, we've all come down, certainly the Oakville contingent has come down on the proposition that if people can't afford to carry their own freight, are we sure we really want to cut them a deal to get them here? Because would we have to carry them the rest of our lives? You know, there's good businesses and there's bad businesses. We do think, don't we, quite a lot about what's the quality of the folks that I mean, we only have so much employment land left. Who do you want to use it on, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Well, if you look at our development charges, Siemens paid $7 million, PricewaterhouseCoopers $7 million, the Outlet Mall $7 million. We're collecting that money, but we're still getting businesses. And when you ask those businesses, as you've done it, because you were a part of course, bringing Siemens in, why do you come here? They come here because it's the best place to live anywhere. And I say that in Halton, not only obviously in Oakville, and that's what's attracting. The houses are selling out within days. They're only selling 200 at a time because they increase the prices on the next 200, and that's because of the great community coming in. So they're making good money, but it's only fair that the new people pay for that, and quite frankly, if they don't, it's either the taxpayers or we're putting money in the developer's pocket. And so these are some of the richest people, not only in Canada, in the world, and we're not going to have them subsidize a senior on a fixed income. They need to pay for it, and we've been successful, and we're the fastest growing.
So doing business in Halton and Oakville has been very, very good for them. We don't need to cut them a tag day, you're saying?
Well, let's put it this way. We've had the record growth. We're the fastest growing community. They're making money, and the people are still wanting to come. We have the fastest growth now coming as a result of places to grow. And when you ask people why they want to come here, the price of homes is going up because people love coming into Halton. It's a safe community. Our taxes are low. We're investing in infrastructure. And that's a real testament to the strong leadership we've seen on regional council. Because I'll tell you, that wasn't always the case in Halton region. It's only since about 2006 that we've been able to do that. And we've got the best record anywhere around.
Oh, you know, it's true. We used to have one of the higher tax rates. Now we have one of the lowest. And I'm very proud of that, of course. You know, one of those companies that you mentioned coming and paying those lovely development charges actually said to me at the closing meeting after a discussion about could they get a deal, they said, okay, you're right. Oakville's worth it, they said. So I'm very...
Same principle with Target, because they said to our good friend Gord Krantz, you need to lower the DCs. He says, no, it's a great community, and they paid the full amount, and they came. So yeah. Same principle.
Yeah. So when you're in business, one of your jobs is to press for the best deal you can get. They certainly do that, and our job is to press back. So where do you think we're headed in terms of our DCs? I'm personally concerned that Markham keeps leapfrogging us. No matter how we try to get to be number one, Markham, which is also a very successful community and that people apparently will pay anything to live in and to set up shop in, because they're also attracting commercial and employment. Tom, what's lying ahead?
We're still leaders. Long ago, we started on the tactic of raising our development charges, and I believe Markham and other communities have followed our suit. Now, they may have leapfrogged us. We're going to continue to press ahead on trying to keep our position with them, but long ago, we started on this direction of raising our development charges to cover the full cost of growth to the maximum extent that we can based on the Development Charges Act. And I think other communities have heard our story. They've seen what's happened to our finances all being good, and they want to be like us on that front. And so I think we'll be I would like to continue the direction that we're in. When we started at the region in 2006, the transportation budget we had on the capital budget was about $50 million a year, and most of that was covered by taxpayers. This year we've got a $177 million transportation budget, and it's the exact opposite. Most of it's being covered by development charges.
Now that's capital?
And that's the capital budget. That's the hard infrastructure, building new roads and rebuilding roads that need to be rebuilt. And you can see that that's good for our community with respect to the need to get people around and get goods around. That's one of the #1 things that we've been trying to deal with is the transportation system, and using development charges, we're able to effectively deal with it.
So now, Alan, you often play the role on our councils of the thrifty Scot, and basically what Tom's just described is our roads first policy, you could call it. How do you think your residents are responding to that? Because your area is an established area. They would experience this as they travel out of their area and through the rest of Oakville and Halton.
I think we heard in the previous segment as well that it's small local issues that people are dealing with today. There's no major issues, so we've addressed the major issues. We're addressing the infrastructure concerns that they have. DCs are paying for a lot of the additional facilities, which is good. And just one point I wanted to mention was that at the region, I think we're also leading the way in that we're not lending money to the developers for the infrastructure. They have to pay up front amongst themselves. We're the only region that's doing that, and I think other regions, again, will follow on in our principle that taxpayers will not be saddled with potential debt for new growth.
That's a good point, because we keep our AAA credit rating. Great Britain doesn't have a AAA credit rating. The United States doesn't. The province of Ontario doesn't. Our good friends to the east in the city of Toronto doesn't. We have that because we make them pay for it, and that's something that's unique. And so essentially what it is, if they want to play, they pay, and that's allowed us to keep the AAA credit rating, which I think is extremely important.
Well, you've just had the last word. We're out of time. I really thank you for joining us today, and I hope that you will join us again when we look at the things that matter to Oakville and we show how council matters.